Hey there, Jordan Chariton, live Wednesday. It is March 30th. The year is 2022. Hope everybody's having a lovely, lovely day. Please smash the like button, share this live stream. As you can see, some funny things are going on. Some funny things are going on YouTube with our numbers lately. I'm seeing it other channels too, but us worse than most other channels, where it doesn't really seem like our videos are getting to most of our subscribers, and the numbers are mysteriously very low. So please smash the like button. Please share the live stream. The more people that like, share, comment, all those good things, it makes a big, big difference. Have a fun show for you. We're going to have something scandalous towards the end, a follow-up on more toxic corruption in Michigan. But before that, we wanted to have a little bit of fun with the Will Smith slap heard round the world against Chris Rock at the Oscars, which obviously, whatever, that's not something I would really cover much, other than to say, personally, don't assault people at the Oscars, even if they make a bad joke. But I was thinking to myself, and please smash the like button. Super chats welcome. We'll read them at the end. I was thinking to myself, there's a lot of political slaps to the face of working class people that do not get as much buzz as Will Smith slapping the shit out of Chris Rock. So I recorded earlier a video. Poor Colin. It was quite a piece to edit, since when I record videos, I stop and start a lot. I'm much better on live than I am recording stuff. But I did the top 5 political slaps in the face of the working class. And if I do say so myself, I think this list is pretty good. Pretty good. So this is actually substantive. The 5 slaps in the face. So get ready for it. And after that, we're going to have an activist from Michigan on about the continued corruption going on there, this time in Kalamazoo, and toxic levels of air pollution that suddenly the state of Michigan is delayed on reporting the latest numbers. Interesting indeed. As a reminder, we were live at the Amazon warehouse yesterday. So definitely check out that live stream if you didn't see it. Today is the last day of the union election. We interviewed workers out there during the election yesterday. That's up on YouTube. They had quite a lot to say about AOC and other progressives abandoning them and not supporting their union drive. So that's up on the channel, and other videos recently that you might have not seen. So without further ado, let's take a look at the top 5 political slaps in the face to the working class. Got to thinking, the slap heard round the world between Will Smith and Chris Rock, yeah, looks like it hurt. But aren't there a lot of more hard-hitting slaps to the planet, the working class, actual living, breathing human beings suffering? Here are the top 5 political slaps. Number 5. David Sirota tweeted about the Will Smith Chris Rock fiasco. My thoughts on the Oscar slap incident are that it's 70 degrees in Antarctica, and what's left of the livable ecosystem is being destroyed, and so we should focus on that. Maybe he has a point. This is from CNN. Scientists were shocked this month when a research station in Antarctica reported extraordinarily warm weather. The temperature at Concordia Research Station atop Dome C on the Antarctic Plateau, typically known as the coldest place on Earth, surged to an astounding 11.3 degrees Fahrenheit on March 18th. The normal high temperature for the day is around minus 56 Fahrenheit, which puts the March 18th reading at close to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, warmer than normal. If the World Meteorological Organization actually tracked this particular metric, scientists say it would likely set a world record. Then we move on that the Antarctic ice shelves are shattering. How fast will the seas rise? All scientist Erin Petty could see when she looked at the satellite photos of the ice shelf in front of the Thwaites Glacier in West Antarctica was the giant crack that stretched across most of the image. Is the heat wave not enough for you in Antarctica? Well, East Antarctica ice shelves are collapsing, the first in human history for that region, worries scientists. An ice shelf the size of New York City has collapsed in East Antarctica, an area long thought to be stable and not hit much by climate change, concerned scientists say. The collapse, captured by satellite images, marked the first time in human history that the frigid region had an ice shelf collapse. It happened at the beginning of a freakish warm spell last week when temperatures soared more than 70 degrees warmer than normal in some parts of East Antarctica. But you know, Will Smith, Chris Rock, the outrage, the scandal. What will the Academy do? Now we move on to the actual emergency funding we need that we are not getting for the climate inferno. This is from Reuters. World needs $5 trillion in annual climate finance by 2030 for rapid action. Climate finance needs to rise sharply to $5 trillion a year globally by 2030 to fund measures to fight climate change, researchers said on Thursday, warning that transformation across economies is too slow to meet international temperature goals. From transport to agriculture and electricity, progress is lagging in all sectors on reducing planet heating emissions, as the pace required to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and avoid its worst effects, a study by 5 green groups found. None of the 40 indicators it assessed are in line with the 2015 Paris Agreement goal of reining in average temperatures rise to well below 2 degrees Celsius and ideally 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial times. Now, if you want to know what the most media coverage has been as far as the climate inferno, look no further to the negative reviews on Don't Look Up, the movie that David Sirota co-wrote that was a smashing success on Netflix. Running at 2 hours and 18 minutes, many critics noted that the film felt bloated, unfocused, and depressing. The Hollywood Reporter describes it as a, quote, tiresome doomsday whoopee cushion. The Guardian found Don't Look Up to have an interesting subject, but a patronizing approach, writing in the review that, quote, script states the obvious as if everyone else is too stupid to realize it. So there you have it. Don't Look Up depicted a life-ending, planet-destroying asteroid, and the majority of the media were too worried about the patronizing tone of the movie rather than what it depicts, which is we're all fucked. The number 4 political bitch slap heard around the world. The Democratic primaries of 2016 and 2020. Remember the good old days of 2016? Bernie Sanders announcing his campaign unexpectedly on the lawn of the Senate? His ragtag campaign going from a nothing burger to all of a sudden a behemoth, grassroots funding record machine? Yeah, well, the media apparently didn't like that. And the Democratic Party apparently didn't like that. On the night of the Iowa caucus in 2016, MSNBC, CNN, and the rest of the corporate media called the race for Hillary Clinton when she was winning by less than a point. Do you think they would call the race for Bernie Sanders if he was winning by less than a point? Then there was the amazing media coverage of Bernie campaign rallies where he had 30,000, 35,000 people in attendance in cities like Seattle, New York City. Of course, the media was covering that. Oh, wait, they were covering Trump's empty podiums instead. Then we moved on to the rest of the campaign where the Bernie bro narrative was pushed by MSNBC, the New York Times, of Bernie supporters as sexist and then racist. And of course, Bernie Sanders, in debate after debate, unfortunately, chose not to go for the jugular of his opponents. But 2020 was excruciatingly rancid in terms of the fairness of the Democratic primary. Now, let's start with the day before the Iowa caucus. Remember, the Des Moines Register poll, considered the holy grail of political polling, was supposed to be released. But mysteriously, it was not released, spiked the night before because the Pete Buttigieg campaign had complained about one person being called and polled without being offered Buttigieg as a choice. Oh, the horror. The Des Moines Register spiked the poll. the numbers actually came out showing that poll would have showed Bernie Sanders leading at 22%, Warren at 18%, and Pete Buttigieg at 16% in third place. I wonder why they didn't release that poll the night before the Iowa caucus, which would have given Bernie more positive media coverage and possibly more momentum to perform even better in the Iowa caucus. Then you had the actual Iowa caucus, where it was a shadowy affair. Here's my reporting at the time for The Intercept. Investigator, DNC was directly involved in Iowa caucus app development, countering the DNC denial. In a closed session Iowa State Democrats meeting, members pushed for answers on the DNC's role in the caucus debacle. Here's a little. The Democratic National Committee refused to cooperate with investigators and was, quote, directly involved in the development process of the infamous Shadow app ahead of the 2020 Iowa caucuses. That's the conclusion of the former U.S. attorney leading the investigation into what went wrong during the first in the nation caucuses as relayed to the Iowa State Democratic Party in a closed session meeting last week, according to a transcript of the meeting obtained by The Intercept. Quote, the DNC was directly involved in the development process. Nicholas Kleinfeld, a former federal attorney appointed by President Obama, told the Iowa Democratic Party State Steering Committee in the December 12th meeting about the findings of an investigation he led alongside former Iowa Attorney General Bonnie Campbell. Kleinfeld's revelation about the committee involvement counters the DNC's claim it made immediately after the Iowa caucus. Back then, the DNC claimed it had absolutely no involvement in the development or coding of the Shadow app, which was supposed to record and report caucus results. When third district state party member Kim Callahan asked investigators to expand in the DNC's involvement, they failed to elaborate, simply confirming that the DNC wouldn't cooperate with this investigation. Interesting. So let's put it in a row for you. The Des Moines Register poll with Bernie leading is spiked. Then on the night of the Iowa caucus, there is an app malfunction where they can't report the results. Meanwhile, Pete Buttigieg goes out claiming he's the winner of the Iowa caucus without any numbers released. Of course, Bernie's campaign doesn't fight back and just move on saying they won. But the media narrative led to Pete Buttigieg getting 5-6 days of media coverage as the winner of the Iowa caucus, helping him go up in the New Hampshire primary by 7 to 10 points. When Bernie won by a point in New Hampshire, the media declared Bernie lost because it was so close. But then we move on to Nevada, where the true media guillotine started coming for Bernie. Bernie crushed the competition in Nevada, beating second place pragmatic choice Joe Biden by 27 points. What was the media's response? Let's listen to Chris Matthews comparing Bernie's victory and soon-to-be clinching of the Democratic nomination to the Nazis invading Paris.
Bernie, on the other hand, did his job. He got more than a majority of that 67%. That is the name of the game. It is pretty much over unless that changes. I was reading last night, Brian, I know you're a history guy too. I'm reading last night about the fall of France in the summer of 1940. And the general, Renault, calls up Churchill and says, it's over. And Churchill said, how can it be? You got the greatest army in Europe. How can it be over? He said, it's over. So I had that suppressed feeling
for the entire week after Bernie won the Nevada caucus leading to the South Carolina primary. The media had a collective freakout, and Anderson Cooper, interviewing Bernie Sanders on 60 Minutes, had to ask the most important question: what's your thoughts on Fidel Castro in Cuba? Of course, Bernie answered honestly, probably a mistake, and the media crushed him as a communist sympathizer. That was the coverage leading into the South Carolina primary, where Joe Biden expectedly crushed the competition. But after the South Carolina primary, oh boy, it was like a pep rally for Joe Biden, as CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post aired nonstop coverage for the several days between South Carolina and Super Tuesday, basically anointing Joe Biden the comeback kid. CNN called it an earned media tsunami for Joe Biden. And estimates said that he got nearly $70 to $100 million in free media in just those days between South Carolina and Super Tuesday. We all know what happened on Super Tuesday, where Joe Biden, on riding the waves of a media love fest and the comeback kid narrative, won states he didn't even campaign in. The fairness of Democratic primary elections. The number 3 slap heard around the world, the Democratic Party and police reform following the horrific murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Jordan Davis, Eric Garner, Dante Wright. I could go on and on. Now, the country came together for historic protests after the killing of George Floyd in 2020. We saw young people, old people, all over the country marching in the streets. We heard political talk. This is the moment that we're finally going to get real reform, air quotes, reform from the police. Well, what ended up happening? Not so much. From The Intercept, Senate negotiations on police reform started breaking down on May 9th when House Majority Whip James Clyburn, Democrat of South Carolina, told CNN that Democrats should open their minds to passing a measure that did not end qualified immunity, the legal doctrine that protects police officers from civil suits. Qualified immunity and ending it was the top demand from Black Lives Matter and other activists across the country. But James Clyburn and the Democratic Party, we don't need to get rid of that. Over the past year, ending qualified immunity has often been framed as a marquee activist issue, but the concept has long had bipartisan support. Following backlash from some centrist members to protest against police brutality, Democrats have been skittish to support any measures that could be used to attack them later as anti-police. And many have leaned into the notion that the legal doctrine is untouchable. The likelihood that a measure to end or even limit the scope of qualified immunity will advance to the final package is growing smaller by the day, as former Congressional Black Caucus Chair Karen Bass of California and Cory Booker of New Jersey try to hammer out a deal with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. But as Scott Roberts, Senior Director of Criminal Justice Campaigns at Color of Change, the pageantry was, quote, troubling. He told The Intercept that, quote, it feels like an effort to make the Justice and Policing Act the end-all be-all. After a jury convicted Chauvin of murder last month, that's Derek Chauvin, who killed George Floyd, congressional staffers told Axios there was a sense of relief in the Capitol that Chauvin's conviction alleviated pressure to pass a police reform package. Meanwhile, organizers renewed a push to further policies that prevent violent interactions with law enforcement in the first place, rather than simply trying to hold police accountable after they've already caused harm to someone, as was the aim of most congressional negotiations, Roberts said. In a statement, Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman said that keeping qualified immunity would be an insult to protesters and voters who helped elect Biden. Quote, despite protests, demands, and elections, unarmed Black people continue to die at the hands of the police, while qualified immunity continues to shield police from accountability and the culture of excessive force by the hands of law enforcement against Black and brown bodies persists, she said, adding that the removal of the provision, quote, would be an affront to those who marched and those who voted for change, effectively placing a bandage over a gaping wound. But they didn't stop at qualified immunity and keeping that. JPA policies that may not make it into a Senate bill include making it easier to federally prosecute officers who violate someone's civil rights and any meaningful cuts to federal law enforcement budgets. The latter piece was central to the failed BREATHE Act. But several measures that are unlikely to have much impact on policing have a stronger chance of approval from Senate negotiators. These include mitigation efforts that are already in place in many cities, like implicit bias training, bans on chokeholds, and body cameras. Organizers point out that such mechanisms don't decrease the number of interactions people have with police, which is a key part of addressing the root causes of police brutality. In many cases, don't actually end the use of banned tactics. And of course, the other day, President Biden announced his budget and $32 billion more for the police, or what they're calling community policing. Number 2, political bitch slap heard around the world. President Biden announcing an $800 billion military budget. Let's take a listen.
Security also means national and international security. This budget provides the resources we need to keep Americans safe, ensuring that our military remains the best prepared, best trained, best equipped military in the world. This budget also provides additional funding to forcefully respond to Putin's aggression against Ukraine and its economic, humanitarian, and security consequences. The world has changed. In addition to dealing with terrorist organizations, for the second quarter of the 21st century, we're once again facing increased competition from other nation states, China and Russia, which are going to require investments to make things like space and cyber and other advanced capabilities, including hypersonics. And this will be among the largest investments in our national security in history. Some people don't like the increase, but we're in a different world today. America is more prosperous, more successful, and more just when it is more secure.
Somehow, after ending a 20-year-old boondoggle war in Afghanistan, we have to increase the military budget. And, the defense contractors are giddy. Here's a January 25th earnings call where Raytheon CEO Greg Hayes is downright giddy, including tensions in Eastern Europe among the factors that Raytheon stands to benefit from. He said, quote, "We just have to look to last week where we saw the drone attacks in the UAE, which have attacked some of the other facilities. And of course, the tensions in Eastern Europe, the tensions in the South China Sea, all of those things are putting pressure on some of the defense spending over there. So I fully expect we're going to see some benefit from it." Raytheon isn't alone in its projections. Among those noting the likely boost to profits is Jim Teichlet, the chairman, president, and CEO of Lockheed Martin. In a January 25th earnings call, he told investors, quote, "If you're looking at the evolving threat level and the approach that some countries are taking, including North Korea, Iran, and through some of its proxies in Yemen and elsewhere, and especially Russia today, these days, and China, there's renewed great power competition that does include national defense threats to it." That sweet sound of Lockheed Martin and Raytheon cashing in on human suffering and mass murder. By the way, if you were unaware, this is from 2012. It's still around the same number. Huffington Post says it would cost about $20 billion for the government to effectively eliminate homelessness in the United States, a housing and urban development official told the New York Times on Monday. $800 billion for the military, $20 billion to end homelessness. Gee. Now, how much would it cost to end U.S. hunger? This is from Just Harvest. Joel Berg, "I calculated that you could end hunger in the U.S. entirely by raising the food purchasing power of low-income Americans by $25 billion. If we could do it all through wage increases, that would be great. Although most hungry people in America are children, senior citizens, and people with disabilities. So you would probably need a combination of increased wages and improved safety net programs, like the civilized world that doesn't have this level of hunger has." Oh, you say, that's crazy. $25 billion? That's so much money. That is about a third of the money Bill Gates has in the bank. $800 billion for the military, $25 billion to end hunger in America. Gee, tough choice. Apparently it is for Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, and of course, the Republican neocons. But making this slap much, much harder is Biden's proposing an $800 billion military, while at the same time saying they're broke, can't afford more COVID testing, vaccine distribution, or vaccine distribution to the third world. Bill passed last week. President Biden signed the bill into law on Tuesday, hailing it as a bipartisan achievement without mentioning the lack of COVID-19 funding. This is going on at the same time. There is now a new sub-Omicron variant that is the dominant strain in America, spreading rapidly in the Northeast and is even more contagious than Omicron, which was already the most contagious virus possibly in human history. We'll see what happens with hospitalizations and deaths, but gotta love a country that has the money to increase your military to $800 billion, to increase police funding by $32 billion, but can't find the money in the cookie jar to test for COVID, roll out additional vaccines, or distribute vaccines to the third world, which would actually help stop these accelerating variants, because the third world that is under vaccinated is a breeding ground. Priorities, priorities. This was a tough choice, but the number one political bitch slap heard around the world, President Biden and the Democrats selling you the historic economic recovery. Let's take a listen.
Last year, we cut the deficit by more than $350 billion. This year, we're on track to cut the deficit by more than $1,300 billion. $1,300 billion. That would be the largest one-year reduction in the deficit in U.S. history. And here's how we're achieving it, this record deficit reduction. First, we're growing the economy. We've created a record 6.7 million jobs since I took office, and we've generated a GDP growth of 5.7%, the best economic growth we've seen in this country in over 40 years. This has led to substantial increase in government revenues and dramatically improved our fiscal situation. Secondly, this record economic and job growth has made it possible for us to responsibly and significantly cut back on emergency spending. Early in the pandemic, it was right to give people help to make ends meet and to keep this economy going. Because of the progress we've made dealing with these emergencies, the labor market is strong and unemployment claims are at historic lows. We ended the pandemic unemployment assistance programs because Americans are back to work. I'm calling for new pandemic subsidies for large businesses to not continue those because those businesses are back and moving again as well. But because we have to put this economy in a strong foundation, even the Delta and Omicron variants of COVID-19 and the cost of Putin's aggression in Ukraine have not required an additional fiscal package for state and local governments.
Now, Status Coup and I go around the country covering the real economy. Well, if you didn't know about that real economy, housing and rent are going up 30 to 50%. And as I've shown in our new Economic Hunger Games series, we have senior citizens literally feeling suicidal because their rent is going up $800. Let's take a listen. Most Americans can't afford a $400 emergency. We're talking about rent going up $800 to $1,000
a month. A month, not a year.
And
yeah, it's crazy.
And maybe you don't have the answers, but what are you going to do? I mean, you're an older woman. You have till when? The end of April to leave your place?
Yeah, I'm considering suicide, but don't tell anyone because then 1 million people will be calling me.
Well, this is going out. This interview is going out. So. Well, please don't do that. If there's people that can help you.
No, that they can't help me because they can't find me a house here.
No, but in all
I'm laughing, but it's black laughter, right? I mean, you realize there's really nothing that people in my situation can do.
Right.
You can't remake the housing market.
While other seniors I've spoken to, even in rent-controlled apartment, are having to eat rice and beans half of the time to afford all of their expenses.
My rent now takes, with a new rent, 42% of my income. Mm. Prices are rising in the grocery store. I have cats and cat food is rising. A case of cat food that before the pandemic cost $12 is now almost $16. And that is a huge increase when you're considering a fixed income. And halfway through my month, I find myself making difficult decisions. The cats always get fed. They always get kitty litter. And I'm the one who is eating rice and beans for half the month with no fresh veggies.
This is going on as the billionaires in America added $5 trillion in wealth to their fortunes during the pandemic. From CNN, billionaires added $5 trillion to their fortunes during the pandemic, according to Oxfam, exacerbating economic inequality as the pandemic pushed millions of people around the world into poverty. Using data compiled by Forbes, Oxfam says in a new report that the total Total wealth of billionaires jumped from 8.6 trillion in March 2020 to 13.8 trillion in November 2021, a bigger increase than the previous 14 years combined. Talk about build back better. Meanwhile, today, Joe Manchin shot down President Biden's billionaire tax proposal. Centrist Joe Manchin, gotta love when the media calls this man centrist, on Tuesday shot down President Biden's new plan to raise $360 billion in revenue by imposing a 20% minimum tax on billionaires, a proposal the president formally unveiled Monday in his budget request for Congress. Manchin says he doesn't support the president's plan to tax the unrealized gains of billionaires, which would set a new precedent by taxing the value an asset accrues, in theory, before it is actually sold and converted into cash. Quote, "You can't tax something that's not earned. Earned income is what we're based on," he told The Hill. "There's other ways to do it. Everybody has to pay their fair share." You gotta love the man who's raked in nearly $5 million from a coal company while serving as a senator, talking about everyone's fair share. This is happening in the wealthiest country on earth, as an unprecedented number of people are now finding themselves homeless. But in Biden's historic economic recovery, there's good suggestions coming from the corporate media. As Bloomberg Opinion tweeted out, inflation stings the most if you earn less than $300,000. Here's how to deal. Take the bus. Don't buy in bulk. Try lentils instead of meat. Nobody said this would be fun. Such great advice. Who needs therapy? Meanwhile, teachers who are notoriously underpaid are now getting a boost from Airbnb, who is partnering with the teachers' unions so that teachers could share their homes for extra income. Meanwhile, during this historic economic recovery, where people are facing 30 to 50% rent and housing increases, homelessness is exploding, food prices, gas through the roof, economic relief during a still active pandemic gone, you have Republican Senator Rick Scott saying the poor are not paying enough in taxes. Let's take a listen.
But here's what's not fair. We have hardworking Americans. They're paying all these taxes. Our retirees pay them. Who's not? We've got some billionaires not paying it. And we got people that want free government stuff, and they don't want to have any skin in the game.
I mean,
that's not fair.
If people pay like even $100 in taxes a year,
$10,
or at least you know that's what it is, paying taxes, right. And you don't want people to get bankrupt, obviously.
Maybe the realities of this historic economy are why a disgraced former president is literally leading the current president, Biden, and Vice President Harris in 2024 polling. There you have it. Will Smith slapped the shit out of Chris Rock, but I got to tell you, this shit feels a lot harsher. I had a lot of fun with that. Sorry for the audio issue. I don't know what happened, but Colin's going to try to fix it after the fact. So we might repost it if we could fix some of the audio static that was going on my end. But we might try to do more of these top 5 lists. Keep it substantive, but borderline a little clicky, because damn, YouTube is making it very hard to exist these days. So keep the super chats coming. Smash the like button. We got another interview coming up on more corruption in the United Corporations of America. But one note on this. Hey, do I think it's scandalous that Will Smith slapped the shit out of Chris Rock? I do. I mean, yeah, your wife was insulted, but that doesn't mean you could assault someone. But I don't know. I think it's a little harsher when the Antarctica, the ice caps are melting. It's 70 degrees above normal in Antarctica. Wait for the sea level to rise longer. And we are being fed about democracy and elections when the primary is completely rigged on the Democratic side. And, you know, black men are being murdered around the country. Unarmed black men and women now are being murdered around the country. And the Democratic Party's police reform was nothing. And number 2, of course, was the $800 billion military. Gotta love that. How are you going to pay for it? As the buzz line during Democratic primary elections and Republicans, while we could pay for the military, it'll be $2 trillion in no time. And of course, the historic economic recovery. That's quite a slap in the face, because right now it's historically bad for most people. Now, Moving on, and I'll read your super chats at the end. Keep them coming. I want to follow up on a story in Michigan, and this time not in Flint, but in Kalamazoo. Joining me now is Brandy Crawford. Brandy, I had you on a couple weeks ago talking about really insane toxic pollution by a graphics company there that is causing all sorts of illness, but shockingly, the same state environmental and health department that covered up the Flint water crisis seems to be covering this up as well. For people that didn't see our first interview, just rewind, tell people the short version of what is this company, what toxins have they been emitting, and how have people become sick?
The company is Graphic Packaging International. They're located 70 locations around the world. They are located next to a fence line community in Kalamazoo, Michigan. They emit every toxic gas you can think of: hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, lead, mercury. I mean, there's about 30 different toxic chemicals and gases that they release on a daily basis. They release around, it's like a million, like it was like 800,000 tons of pollution at once. And I think they just increased it another like 700,000 tons of pollution with their expansion that just started up. And sadly, since I talked to you last, 2 more men in their 20s died from asthma attacks since the expansion started up a couple of weeks ago. And another 31-year-old had a heart attack from an asthma attack, and he's in a coma. So that's just what I know. There could be even more. That's just of the people that I was notified of. Sadly, I knew this was going to happen. That's why I fought it so hard, that I knew that the pollution increases with this expansion would make it just more miserable for everyone living there, on top of all the gas leaks that Graphic Packaging is still refusing to fix. But, you know, all you can do is just speak out, fight, and file complaints, file lawsuits. I mean, that's all you can do, because the state is in cahoots with the environmental department. They're the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Council, and EGLE, aka MDEQ. They work together to give hundreds of millions of dollars to corporations like Graphic Packaging to continue to slowly poison residents of Michigan.
And can we show, Colin, we got some numbers here, and this is money that has been given from the state of Michigan to this packaging company that has been a known toxic polluter for years. This is in 2019. Graphic Packaging got over $7 million from the state of Michigan, right there at the bottom. And then tax-exempt bonds, another $110 million. This is from the state of Michigan, helping them finance bonds so that they could expand, while the state of Michigan is supposedly remediating the toxic pollution, which, by the way, Colin, can we put up leading cause of death in Michigan? Right there, Kalamazoo. You see chronic lower respiratory diseases, 48%. Michigan's average, 46%. National average, 41%. So you got 7% higher in Kalamazoo than the national average chronic lower respiratory disease, which, Brandy, you were just describing 2 20-year-olds who recently died due to asthma.
Yeah, we have the highest, on top of the deaths, we have the highest asthma hospitalization rate, being hospitalized for asthma, than any city in the nation. Just sad. And like, that's why it's crazy that MEDC would even give any money to Graphic Packaging when they knew since 2010 there was numerous violations from another department in Michigan, EGLE, you know, aka MDEQ, the MDEQ, Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. They changed their name after the Flint water crisis. Still the same stuff going on. So they change, they work together, it seems like, because no penalties were ever given for the violations. They are saying that graphic packaging has been enforcement for over a year, but nothing's going on. I even called the Eagle enforcement guy last week, and he goes, "Oh, I'm drawing a fine line by talking to you, Brandy. I shouldn't even be talking to you, And I'm just like, what's going on? Like, why are you guys not like having them fix their equipment? Like, people are dying. Like, do you guys understand there's a 14-year death gap here? Like, people are dying of asthma attacks, and you guys are acting like it's not a big deal. I mean, how is this company going to change their ways if you don't do any enforcement? Oh, we're working with them on a settlement. I don't know what to tell you. It's just, we're working on it. And it's like, that's why I filed that civil rights complaint against Eagle, because of the lack of enforcement and the permit given to graphic packaging to continue expanding to increase pollution and greenhouse gases by 200%.
And by the way, this is happening in a predominantly Black neighborhood.
Yep.
Have you gotten any response from the state of Michigan on why they've awarded, by my count, $120 million to graphic packaging?
Nope. I've called the governor's office several times. They always say she's going to get back to me, but she never does. I reached out to Fred Upton, which I figured I wouldn't get a response from. He sends me like responses every time I email him that have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Like, it'll talk about housing or just something that's nothing to do with, environmental justice. And I found out graphic packaging donates to Fred Upton's campaign. So, he's our main politician. So that's another reason why it's happening. And I feel like the governor, she's the one that appointed our ex-mayor, who also was gung-ho on giving graphic packaging an expansion to the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Council. Even I was looking at some old Flint water crisis, because this, what's happening here reminds me of it so much, that I was reading it. Dan Wyatt was the MEDQ, the director of DEQ, and now Liesl Clark is. But when he was the director of Eagle, he said one of his main priorities was to work with the Michigan Economic Development Council. Like, how is that? Like, that's not your priority is to protect environmental, poisoning that's happening in Michigan, not in contamination, not about jobs provided. And like I said before, graphic packaging is only, they only told the state of Michigan when they started their expansion that they were going to bring 25 local jobs. So I guess they thought, over 100 million in bonds and 7 million towards the expansion was worth 25 jobs. It was worth to poison everyone.
25 jobs for people that are probably going to get sick on the job from the
right. That's another thing about that health study that you and I were talking about that was supposed to be released this week, which is another department of the state, the health department, the state health department, that was also linked to the Flint water crisis corruption. They have delayed this health study as it relates to to pollution and the asthma that's going on in the community 3 times now. And the guy, the toxicologist working on it, he told me that it was done, and that he told me a couple months ago that it was done, and it was his supervisors had to agree to his health recommendations. So I'm just assuming they did not agree, or they just didn't like the numbers, or what. But
let me show the response you got, Colin. If we have this is what the health department told you. Hi, Ms. Crawford. I apologize for the delay in responding to your email. Unfortunately, we will not be releasing the health report this week. Below is the statement that we provided to reporters who contacted us with questions. MDHHS, the health department, is completing the health consultation using all available environmental monitoring and sampling data collected from community areas near graphic packaging and the Kalamazoo Water Reclamation Plant, as well as results from MDHHS's chronic disease epidemiology section review of asthma prevalence and hospitalization rates in Kalamazoo. This process takes time, and it is important that our health consultations are accurate, complete, and scientifically sound. Yes, so scientifically sound. The Michigan Health Department and Environmental Department is that they were caught manipulating water lead testing in Flint tossing out high lead levels. As I reported many years ago, they were literally running people's water right before taking the lead and copper sample, which is against federal regulations. And now they just need more time. That's the issue. Why they're not releasing the numbers. My guess is the numbers are bad.
They don't need any more time, though, Jordan. That's the thing. I hired a toxicologist that spoke with the EPA and myself in December of 2020. He did a report and he said the employees of both plants, the wastewater plant and graphic packaging, and the residents that living in this fence-line community where gases are trapped in the valley have a severe risk to their health. And he figured this out just by looking at 2 city gas studies that were done in 2009 and 2020. If he can figure that out, and then an epidemiologist, Dr. Ansel from Chicago, does an epidemiology report showing these asthma hospitalization rates being so high for asthma, they also have that report. So they have 2 reports from doctors saying severe health risk, help this community. They've had both of these since 2020. Now it's 2022. And they're sitting here trying to downplay the risks and ask for more time, in my opinion, to continue to downplay the risks in this report. And it's just insane to me. Like, it's just so immoral. And I don't know what they consider an immediate public health risk. If I have 2 doctors saying there's immediate public health risk, but you're saying there's no short-term risks, but there might be some long-term risks. And then we're going to tell you those in our report and what you should do to, like, minimize these long-term risks. Well, hello, stop giving hundreds of $1 million to polluters to continue poisoning everybody might be one of them. I mean,
right. A lot of Greater Michigan were excited when Gretchen Whitmer was elected. They thought a lot of this corruption, cover-ups, environmental poisoning, they'd have a better chance of some justice and things being fixed under a Democrat. But the money we showed that was awarded to this known toxic polluter, both of those amounts were under this governor, Gretchen Whitmer. I mean, with Democrats like this, I mean, she's not the only one.
I voted for her, but I mean, I wouldn't vote for her again because, like I said before, she has visited Kalamazoo on several different occasions, but not once come to tour a neighborhood in Michigan that is suffering the greatest health consequences out of anywhere in the state. I mean, Detroit's suffering as well, and Flint. But I mean, just from the reports that we have, I mean, I think that our neighborhood, because of the topography being a valley, is suffering the most. And she is going to Kalamazoo, taking pictures with the mayors and talking about, development and housing, building new housing developments, or, and they're not even for low income people either. Like, they're paying high rents for this. And just all these other things she's coming there for. Anything about a politician, like, if she's coming there to, like, represent a politician, but never, like, she would not return my calls. Her office would not. I've called there for 2 years. And she is just ignoring it. I've called the Attorney General's office. I've called every politician. I've emailed every politician. I've emailed everyone. And they're just like, ignore, and it'll go away is what they think. You
mean the Attorney General that charged the former governor who presided over the poisoning of a community with a misdemeanor? That Attorney General?
That one.
That one. I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of corruption in the United Corporations of America, but Michigan's, they are the number one. They did a study on it. They did. Is it the public integrity? When I'm talking about public integrity, they did a they do a study every single year, and Michigan is always number one state that is the most corrupt. We get around 18 corruption cases a year, and like New York gets like 4. So it's like Michigan. I mean, you would think even with the study coming out every year saying Michigan is the most corrupt, that everybody would be focused on Michigan and trying to fix the corruption, but they're just completely ignoring it. Like, it's crazy to me. Like, even the ATSDR is supposed to be like
being in on this health study with the state health department. And they have this thing saying, you know, we don't want you to be stressed out if you live in an environmentally contaminated community. And the residents are stressed. This report is getting delayed again. I mean, you don't want people to have stress because it causes health issues, but you're not, you know, moving this study along with health recommendations. You're not bringing any medical vans, and you have a hotline you can call, and you got FEMA to come in and help people, like with other, you know, emergencies like tornadoes or anything that has to do with climate change, but you have no FEMA to help the residents getting poisoned to death. Where's the money for that? Where's the money? I mean, all this environmental justice, what Biden said, what yesterday, here's what another, I don't know how much it was it 80 million? I don't know. He gave more to the EPA and environmental justice, but
for the EPA and state environmental departments, apparently to boost economic development rather than protect the environment. He also gave it $800 billion for the military and another $32 billion for police. So the priorities are obviously very clear here.
Why say that you're going to do something if you're not going to do it? I'm sick of all the talk. I want to see the action, and I want to see people that actually care that people are getting poisoned to death, because it is completely insane to me that everybody is ignoring this, or not even my civil rights complaint against Eagle. That should be fast tracked because of what is happening in Kalamazoo right now. Like, fast track the civil rights complaint so that you can get this permit revoked so people can stop dying from asthma attacks. And let's not forget about the severe COVID that's happening in Kalamazoo either. I mean, the COVID is horrible. Young people are dying from COVID in our neighborhood, like within 3 days of catching it. Like, that's another thing that's happening. And some of them already have the underlying respiratory disease that probably hasn't even been diagnosed. That's another reason why I want medical vans to come in so that people can be diagnosed with asthma that have not been to a doctor. I mean, I don't know about you, but most people don't go to the doctor that much when they're in their early 20s. Like, they don't even think about it. And so they need people to like bring these vans in and help people. And I just have I feel like I'm losing hope because I've done every possible thing that I can do to help everyone. And I just feel like this was really, like, I was so depressed getting that email yesterday because I was just like, and then they didn't even give a timeline this time. Usually, like, you know, in October, they said, oh, it'll be done in January. And then in January, they said it'll be done in March. And now there's just no timeline given that it'll be released. And they can do something. If they don't want to release this whole 70-page report right now, they don't have to do that, but they can like do something until it's being released or something. Like, you already have enough data to bring help to the community just from the reports that I have sent. And then I've sent them tons of other reports too, just like, you know, fence line communities being polluted, that they're at high risk, you know, just other studies that were done by like different universities that show huge risks in fence line communities that are located next to polluters. So to me, a lot of it's common sense. Do you really need to do a really lengthy study if you already know common sense wise there's a huge risk here? I don't know what it is. I just feel like they're protecting graphic packaging. This whole time, everybody's been protecting. That's why the local governments ignored everyone. That's why you could have someone calling in saying their eyes and lungs are burning, and the mayor Anderson, David Anderson, he won't even address it. He won't even talk about it. Oh, I'm so sorry. I hope you get better. We're going to do everything we can to help you. No, they ignore it. You know?
Can you kind of talk about, for you, how has this affected your health? I know you've moved.
I have high blood pressure. I have anxiety attacks, panic attacks. I've been, you know, last summer was a bad summer for me doing environmental justice work. You know, because the more I find out, the scarier it is for me. And everyone I talk to are like, oh my God, this is like a horror movie, you know? This is crazy that this is actually happening. And I think I had like 18 emergency room visits for panic attacks that my medication couldn't control.
Wow.
So it's affected me mentally and physically a lot. I mean, there's days that I can't get out of bed.
Wow.
And it's sad. And I mean, even after I talk to you, I'm going to have to lay down, take my anxiety medication. Like, it's sad that I have to live like this, or that I have to fight so hard when there's so many people that can help, and they just don't want to do it because they're protecting the polluters.
And has Congressman Dan Kildee, Senator Debbie Stabenow, Senator Gary Peters, anybody in Michigan responded to this, said anything?
Senator Peters' office called me. I told them what was going on. Didn't hear nothing back. I told him, I said, read the news. All you have to do is put a Google alert for graphic packaging Kalamazoo. You can see all the news talking about it. And, this is real. I sent him the toxicology report that I had, the epidemiology report, and nothing. And I just want to know, what is this polluter, Graphic Packaging International, their graphic packaging holding on the stock market? What do they have over everybody? I mean, it's not just this, it's the fact that they literally are like lying to their investors. They're on the stock market, but they're lying to their investors too, saying, we want you to buy green bonds, but you're not even saying that you are a huge polluter that is out of compliance, that has health investigations going on, environmental, you really haven't got penalties, but I guess violations. Like, you have all these violations, and they don't tell the truth. They're just, I mean, I even emailed the CEO at one time, and of course he didn't email me back, but that was in the beginning when I just found out about all the gas leaks and non-pollution prevention put in place. There's like literally zero pollution prevention put in place. And the wastewater plant, I'm kind of like really like sidestepping that a little bit, because they're just as bad as them. They spill. They got Pfizer going through them. The wastewater plant, they got graphic packaging going through them. They got all these, about 18 industrial facilities going through this plant that spills PFAS and PCBs into the Kalamazoo River right next door to them. Like, that's where they dump everything. And we have the worst Superfund site in the Kalamazoo River, like in the United States. I feel like it's like 80 miles long out to Lake Michigan. So they shouldn't be getting away with anything either. And they don't even have any penalties against them. And I'm just like, why? It's because Pfizer's paying people. Like, what is the thing? Is it these corporations just rule everybody? It seems like it's the 1%, all the billionaires, like this little good old boys club, the billionaires club, and they must just like pay everyone kickbacks or something, because I can't, and all the politicians, and, because I can't wrap my head around why this is being allowed to go on like this. Like, it's so insane and so immoral. It's a huge humanitarian crisis to me, a huge public health crisis, and it's got to end. Like, they've got to do something.
Welcome to the United Corporations of America, where people dying of toxic air pollution is just the price of doing business. Same goes with people dying from a pandemic that could have been prevented if the former president would have actually taken aggressive action. And now we have basically erased it, even though there's now another variant spreading. And more people are going to die because the government sold out to business so that we would have zero protections. I understand you're not the first activist I've spoken to that gets depressed, anxious. So definitely take care of yourself. And I appreciate you continuing to fight. I'm with you. So a lot of times when I travel and cover these things, you kind of just feel like you're spinning your wheels and what's the point? But it's the people who continue to go on anyway that end up eventually making a difference. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you actually telling the truth in the news, because all the other networks, they spread lies, and they support corruption. They support, the people that are involved in this whole corruption scheme of allowing people to die premature death and get poisoned, and everything else is going on, like the homeless, like you talked about, everything. It's like, we need people like they need to shut down CNN and Fox News and everybody else and just have you like on TV so people can find out like the truth, because that's the problem, the truth. People are being spread lies and corruption, and nobody is talking about the truth. Nobody has the guts. There's a ton of journalists that do not have the guts to tell the truth, and you do, Jordan, and I'm thankful for that.
Why, thank you. We'll use that in a promo. I think there's a better chance of me being invited to the Oscars and then slapping someone than me getting a nightly show on cable news. YouTube is also doing its darndest to bury this channel, but I'll keep covering these things as long as I can keep the lights on. Thank you, Brandy. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Take care. So that was Brandy Crawford. We're going to continue covering this story. I plan on going to Flint in late April for the 8-year anniversary. So while I'm there, might have to head over to Kalamazoo, Michigan, too, to cover this. And there's other places in Michigan that are also dealing with water poisoning. So they call it pure Michigan. It's really more pure poisoned. Let me read some super chats. Thank you, Peter Iannone, $9.99. Appreciate it. Peter Iannone again, $9.99. I appreciate it. And Double K, $49.99. Why, thank you. I really appreciate it. Tomorrow, Steve Grumbine will be live for Let's Get Ready to Grumble at 5 o'clock. We'll have some other interviews I did that will be airing tomorrow, including with our Economic Hunger Games series. Listen, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to plead with you. If you're not yet a Status Coup member, we need you. If you haven't noticed, our numbers are really bad. I think it has to do with YouTube. We have almost 127,000 subscribers, yet we're going live, if we're lucky, to 150 to 200 people. Our shorter videos are doing worse. Now, either people suddenly stop caring about on-the-ground reporting and the kind of stories we cover that normally they do like, or people aren't seeing it. So if we're going to continue, I need more people to help us with funding. So that's statuscoup.com/join. You could join us for $5 to $10 a month so we continue going on the road, which costs a lot of money, and keeping the lights on, doing these interviews, doing investigative reporting. Please consider signing up as a member. And let me give a shout out. We got a couple members yesterday. Welcome new Status Coup member, Aleta, new member Christine, and new member Barbara. All three signed up yesterday. We need a lot more folks to sign up. So consider signing up, statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for $5 to $10 a month. Makes a huge difference. And we're going to have our members call next week. That's on Zoom with our members, which we do once a month. Thank you for watching. Tune in tomorrow, 5 o'clock, to Steve Grumbine with Let's Get Ready to Grumble. And we'll have some other content putting up, including an interview for the Economic Hunger Games of an Asian family in Kentucky, where the husband, is being threatened with jail and $5,000 fines for the unmowed grass. Wait till you see this interview. Wait till you see this interview. Take care.